Hi, friends. So, in the spirit of EWS that is going to be happening this weekend, it's time to talk about some RTA. Okay? And I thought this time we only have, 1 week left before the RTA season for season 0 ends. Let's talk about some, basic strategies and what I've seen recently in the current meta. Okay? Now, I only have 2 games left before I hit Mythic, so when that happens, you guys will know. Post edit. I'm a G, and I already got my Mythic. So, you guys heard it. I said you were going to hear about it. Now you did. So, back to the video, shall we? But I already, established as one of the top players. I played in the EWS, Cape Top 23. And so, me talking about some RTA comms, some RTA techniques, some things I've seen might be useful to you guys who want to go climb. Okay? So, without further ado, let's go back to our trusty whiteboard that we haven't seen in a long time, shall we? Now, so let's talk about some current. Let's hit this. Let's talk about some current RTA setups. All right. Now, what I'm seeing very, very, very clearly in this coming, RTA season, which is coming to a close, is that we are in a triangle meta. Okay? We are in a triangle meta, which is basically you have your cleave, which in this game we call it the rev cleaving. Okay? And then we have the bloodbath tank. Okay? And then the last one that we have here is CC. All right? And why am I putting it like this? It's because when you're thinking about it, okay, is that you can see that Rev beats CC, right? CC beats Bloodbath Tank, and Bloodbath Tank beats Rev Cleaving, okay? And that is the cycle. If you see someone Rev Cleaving, chances are you know that you will have to be playing tank if you want to survive and you want to win. If not, if you're both going to play Rev Cleave, it's a matter of who goes first wins the game, okay? CC, on the other hand, they are not fast enough to control you. And so Rev Cleavers, they are typically much faster and they don't have to worry so much about, effect accuracy and stuff like that. So they can just unga bunga, they're fastest, pushers, push the entire team, cleave you. And if you're bringing CC, you don't have the defense to stop that, right? But on the other hand, Bloodbath Tank, because they're playing the long game, if they don't have enough supports or they don't have enough purifiers or, units that, dispel or purify or, take care of the team or sustain the team long enough, they just lose to CC because they cannot get out of it and they're much slower. So they are going to stick with the, debuffs for a much longer time. Okay? And that is the basic setup that we have right now in the current format. So once you understand this triangle meta, you can probably know that the next thing I am going to talk about, right, is that your first tip here, okay, tips will be here. Let me just write that. Your first tip is know your place. And what do I mean by know your place? Basically, what I'm talking about is know your role. Okay? If you see that your opponent is going fast and it's cleaving you, play tank. Play it slow. Don't try an ego race. You probably are going to lose. I've done that so many times, and I just yo-yo up and down because it's a matter of who goes first, and eventually they're going to learn who's your fastest unit, they're going to steal it, they're going to ban it, all that kind of stuff, and then you're screwed. Okay? So know your role. Know your place. Okay? Let me just put it there. Know your role. If you are playing fast, and you are, looking at your opponent, and if they draft tank into you, you know that 100% you need to be, on your game to try to beat him. If not, he is going to win most of the time in the draft. All right? So that is your main tip. Now, the second tip that I want to, talk about here is that shells play an important role. Okay, and what do I mean by this? Basically, when you look at a shell, okay, especially when someone is drafting, in this game it's a bit different. You can see what your opponent is bringing as their shell, which is your pet or the substitute damage dealer, supporter, whatever. Okay, and once you understand how to look at this, basically you are looking at the shell, right? Look at shell, and that can usually tell you what they are trying to do, right? For example, if you see a Lily on White Fang, what does that tell you? You know that White Fang drops Swift Rush. It also drops Swift Raid. That means there is double speed, and that means your Lily or the opponent's Lily is probably on double speed. Because what does that mean? He's going to get 35% speed boost from Swift Rush. He's going to get an extra 15% boost from their Swift Raid, which means they have a 50% speed boost. Okay, so you can assume that that unit is going to be giga fast. Same thing I can say about Alicon with Swift Rush and Swift Smite. Same thing I can say about Jackal Guard with Swift Rush, Swift Smite. Same thing I can say about Codex, which has both as well. And so once you understand that, you will know what they're trying to do. Okay, the best way to tell is the shell determines what you are playing. Okay, and what do I mean by that? If you see, all right, a Yelly, for example, on Rev, and you see the next unit they pick is a Freya on Rev, it means that they are trying to Rev cleave. And you can see that in this game, when we talk about cleaving, we are talking about what shell are they putting on their unit. I have seen people who have played Yelly on, Law of Silence, okay? And that tells me one thing. They want their Yelly to survive. They want their Yelly to, not be targeted. And that means they're playing slower. So they're probably playing a standard draft. They're not trying to Rev cleave you. Because with Yelly without Rev relation, does significantly a lot less damage. Okay? And so once you understand that this game, the shell that you put on your unit and the way you, compose your team is super, super important. Okay? Now that we understand these two tips, what I want you guys to do, okay, if you guys get the chance, or if you guys are going to be watching the EWF, which I will be holding a watch party up on stream, and if you guys want to check me on stream, check me out on Abstract. And so what I want you guys to pay attention to is when you look at the EWS, okay, you can easily look at how people are drafting, how the top 8 players are drafting, and you will see the things that I have mentioned. Okay, for example, you're going to see maybe someone playing everything on Lighthouse, and if you see someone on Lighthouse, you know that they're playing tank, because what does Lighthouse have? It has Bloodbath, which is very, very important. Okay, and so once you understand that, you can now look at some basic team compositions. Then that's the third step. All right, understanding team compositions, and that is actually one of the most important thing when it comes to RTA. Your team composition determines whether you win or lose. Okay, so let's talk about the team compositions now. When we talk about team compositions here, the most important thing you have to understand is that we have 5 slots. All right, I'm just gonna draw the line here because this is how we're going to be watching it. Now I'm going to change my color to, let me change it to red. And let's make a nice big X down the line here. Now, why is this super important to understand? Because your third pick, right? I'm going to draw a line here, is what we call the protected pin, right? Okay, both you and your team will get this. If you are first pick, you get to choose your protected pick first. If you're the second pick, you get to choose it after them. So you're reacting, right? When I talk about the roles, you have to understand where you are. If you're going first, then you get to dictate the speed. And if you guys haven't watched that playlist, I'll link it up here right now. Check that out so that you understand what I'm saying here. Okay? So now that we understand this, all right, the person who picks first, let's say this is first pick, all right? The person who picks first usually dictates the speed of the game. Are they going to go super fast? Are they going to go super slow? Okay, and how do you tell? Usually you'll see your opponent first pick Lily, that kind of stuff. So when they do that, that means, they have the speed advantage, all right? Or the privilege to go fast. That's another way to put it, okay? But if you see your opponent first pick something like a Lingluo or a Full Q, which happens sometimes, that means that they intend to tank down and they are using their first pick to tank down, okay? Because very, very good gameplay usually stems from your opponent picking well, and both of the parties, all right, first pick and second pick, always banning last two, okay? If you draft well enough, okay, and you're going to see this in the EWS, all right, a lot of the time, if you draft really well, the last two picks that your opponent picks and you pick are usually the biggest threat to the entire team comp. And if that is the case, you know that you have successfully drafted well. And I've seen this a lot of times, okay? For example, if you see, let's say you're drafting a very heavy buff comp, okay? And your opponent last picks Heinrich. That looks like a must ban, doesn't it? Okay? And so you will be drafting really, really, well if you do that. All right? And that is the most important thing. I see way too many people, and I played way too many people. They ban, the second pick, they ban the first pick. And I just look at them and I go, if you're banning my first pick, that means you've drafted like shit, right? That means that means, your draft is still afraid of the first pick. So you've just you've just drafted the entire team comp afraid of my first pick when you had, literally 5 picks to counter my first pick. Does that make sense? So when you look at the EWS, pay attention to this. This will help you guys improve in RTA as well. And if you guys need to improve, you have to practice. You just have to keep playing games. Okay? It is not until I played a few games that I understood the meta. So you're not going to understand the meta if you do not play. You have to understand what works, what don't work. Like, for example, I learned the hard way that if you play Casio, you cannot play Viper. Because Viper or Rahu is just going to be a numbskull and a dickhead, and it's just going to wake everybody up. When it's, the most important unit to be slapped, they're going to randomly proc their passive or their assist attack and wake the bastard up. And then you're fucked. Happened to me way too many times. I learned my mistake, never doing it again. Okay? And so this is what I want you guys to learn. Team composition. Now, if you're playing an aggressive draft, all right, very quick recap here. You're going to understand that within this 5 picks here, okay, between one of these 5, there are going to be 2 attack buffers. And that can come in the form of, a healer, for example, Valerian. That can come in the form of an attacker, like Freya. That can come in the form of a pusher, like Tsukiyomi. Okay? And you're going to see the similarities that I'm going to say here. And you usually want to have at least 3 damage dealers, because 2 damage dealers is not enough. Not if you're trying to fight tank. Okay? But if you're fighting a cleaver versus a cleaver, it's a matter of who outspeeds first. Even 2 DPS is enough to wipe the entire board. Okay? And the same thing happens. Alright? So this will be for, aggro. And this includes cleavers. All right. And if you're a tank, right, what's going to happen is you're going to flip the script. Okay. You're going to have, about 2 to 3 supports / heal. Okay. And what do I mean by that? It can be in the form of damage mitigation, for example, like a Viper. It can be in the form of, immortality, like Veronica. It can be in the form of, 2 healers like Sanya Linglor. It can be in the form of, damage share like Tiamat. Okay? And so once you understand this, then you will, understand that the drafting process is actually very, very skillful. It takes a lot of understanding of the game to actually, play well. Let's talk about now the protect pick, because this is super important. A lot of the times, if you know that a certain unit is going to counter the entire draft, all right, it's going to counter the entire draft, you want to put it in the protect because they can't ban it. And usually if your first pick, this is where I want to say that you are somewhat in a disadvantage here, all right, which is quite balanced because you get to pick first, but you also show your cards first, right? And so an aggro player will probably play something, a very, very powerful DPS that they have, for example, like a Messiah or a Yeli or a, whatever they have, okay? Rin, let's say. They're going to put it in that spot. That means your entire draft is going to be countering that with your third pick. So for example, if your opponent is playing very heavy in, let's say, like a Messiah, then you're probably going to be picking a Heinrich here, correct? And if you're picking a Heinrich here, that means the entire team from 1, 2, and 3 are going to, be susceptible to buff blocks. Okay? Remember, Messiah without a buff block is kind of shit. Same thing here. If they pick a Ho Yan here, right? That means you can also pick Hein here, correct? Because if Ho Yan doesn't have Stalwart, she just dies. All right? After she slams her S2, you just use your support and flicker off the board. Okay? That can happen. And so there are times you will see your opponent go attack buff, 1 DPS, and then the back 2 will be supporters to that DPS. And usually that means you have to ban it, because if you don't ban the back pick, their DPS is going to survive. And if their DPS survive, you're kind of screwed. Okay? Because they're playing the Protect the Queen comp. Okay? Same thing goes down to, the tank comp. A lot of people will like to slam Tiamat on 3, because if you cannot clear Tiamat and you have, a bunch of healers supporting her, that Tiamat is going to cook you. All right? So, now that you understand the team compositions here, I thought I just, bring this out to you because the EWS is coming. And if you guys are watching the EWS, it's probably good to understand these drafting techniques and then see how your opponent play it out. All right? Because the combos in the game is vast. All right? Because now we have 2 layers. We have to think about we have to think about the unit itself, and we have to think about what the shell is on that unit and how it interacts. Make sense? Okay? And you can hear that this is a bit of a more serious background music because I'm just using the Dreamscape background music. But that is the video. Okay? Hopefully you find value into this. Hopefully you can get your mythic so that you can get your tofu. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Catch you guys in the next one.